Have you ever noticed someone who just doesn't post? No selfies, no life updates, no birthday photos. In a world where attention is practically currency, these people seem almost invisible. They don't announce their meals, their milestones, or their moods. While everyone around them is documenting every moment, they simply live it. And most people assume that means something is wrong with them. But that silence isn't random. It actually tells you quite a bit about who they are on the inside. Psychologists have found that people who rarely share photos tend to have what's called a high privacy orientation. Not paranoia, just a genuine preference for keeping their life to themselves. They don't need strangers to react to their vacation, to feel like it was worth going on. They don't need 100 comments on their birthday photo to feel loved. Most people post because the feedback loop is real and it feels good. Low posters have found other sources of that feeling. They validate themselves from within rather than waiting for the world to do it for them. That alone puts them in a completely different psychological category. There's also something interesting in how they relate to their own identity. Research on self-concept clarity shows that people who share less online tend to have a more settled sense of who they are. They're not performing a version of themselves for an audience, and they're not watching trends to figure out what kind of person to be this month. They already know. Their values, their goals, and their sense of what actually matters in life are already clear to them. Other people's reactions don't shift that much. They're not looking for the world to hand them an identity because they already have one. The confidence piece deserves a closer look. There's a type of self-esteem researchers describe as secure, meaning it doesn't need constant input from outside to survive. People like this don't post selfies to feel attractive. They don't announce achievements to feel like they matter. They already feel those things without the confirmation. Psychologists find they tend to be less anxious, less rattled by criticism, and more focused on actual goals rather than how those goals look from the outside. Their self-worth isn't tied to a number on a screen. It comes from something deeper and harder to shake. People who stay quiet online are often louder inside their own heads. They think things through before they speak, and they only share something when it genuinely means something to them. Psychologists call this an internal locus of evaluation. You judge yourself by your own standards rather than whatever the algorithm decides to reflect back at you. These people tend to find surface-level interaction draining rather than rewarding. They'd rather have one honest conversation with someone who actually listens than spend an hour scrolling through reactions from people they barely know. Social media has a documented distortion problem. What you're seeing on your feed isn't people's actual lives, it's the version they carefully chose to upload. The smiles are real, but the context isn't. The highlights are genuine, but the low moments never make it to the timeline. Psychologists have studied the psychological damage this constant comparison causes for decades. You scroll, you compare your ordinary Tuesday to someone else's best Saturday, and most of the time you come out feeling worse about your own life. People who rarely post have usually figured this out, either through reading or just from paying attention to how social media made them feel. They've stepped out of that loop on purpose. For them, the peace is worth more than the visibility. So next time you notice someone keeping their life off the internet, resist the urge to label them as shy, boring, or antisocial. They might just be more grounded, more self-aware, and more emotionally secure than most of the people filling your feed every day. They don't need to be seen to feel real. They don't need an audience to feel like their life is worth living. And honestly, in a world that rewards performance over substance, that kind of quiet confidence is becoming increasingly rare. If understanding why people think and behave the way they do genuinely interests you, subscribe. That's exactly what this channel is about.